Drastically different requirements and very few schools that require fingerprinting before hiring. WRAL Investigates started looking into the background check policies at the schools in our area after police arrested this man, Gregory Pettiford, and charged him with identity theft.
We found that Pettiford worked in at least 4 local schools using different versions of his name and at least one alias. WRAL's Destiny Patterson explains how he was able to get hired in the first place and what's being done to keep it from happening again.
A quick search of Gregory Pettiford's name in Wake County records yielded more than a dozen mugshots, yet he was still able to get hired at multiple schools in our area. His convictions date back to the 80s, most of them fraud-related. And while it was pretty easy for me to find this information, police say that he went by a different name when he applied to a Franklin County charter school, but certain steps could have caught this. I went through more than 100 background check policies for the schools in our area and found a vast difference from one school to the next.
North Carolina law doesn't require schools to conduct background checks on employees, though it's a common practice. Each school district can come up with their own policy, making it as strict or as lax as they want, and they can decide which crimes would disqualify a candidate.
It's very important to check things like past addresses, social security numbers, dates of birth.
WRAL Education Insider Emily Walkenhorst and I found most school systems use private companies to run their background checks, each with their own standards. Records show that most companies check criminal history of all employees statewide, but only a handful check national records. Some policies specifically say the school or district will only check criminal records in the states an applicant has lived in the past 5 or 7 years.
Some of those screening services do a great job, and some of them don't do a great job.
In his decades working with school boards, attorney Richard Schwartz says school systems tend to do a good job weeding people out, but they're not perfect.
Are people going to slip through the cracks? Can fraud happen? Can identity theft happen? Yes, it can.
Pettiford currently faces charges for using someone else's information to get a teaching job at Cross Creek Charter School.
Mr. Pettiford, we just want to share your side of the story.
After he appeared in court, he wouldn't answer any of my questions.
How did you come up with your aliases?
Schwartz says not every agency checks for different versions of people's names, and schools often don't do social security checks for applicants.
They could fool a background agency, they can fool a school system if they're really good at it. But that's all the more reason why getting personal references is really important.
We found that North Carolina laws around background checks are noticeably weaker than other states. For example, most other states require fingerprinting to get a job in a school. I counted about a dozen policies that explicitly mention fingerprinting. Cross Creek added it as a stipulation after Pettiford's arrest.
Right now, in the direction we're going, it doesn't feel safe.
Representative Brian Biggs crafted a bill that would require background checks and strengthen the process.
If you are a criminal, you need not apply to our public education.
He wasn't available for an interview.
It tells me it can be done.
So we sat down with Representative Laura Budd, who provided feedback to help it pass through the House.
Here's the minimum standard, and here are the options for getting it done.
This bill would require public schools to do background checks through the state's Bureau of Investigation or an approved third-party agency.
I think it's good that we have that option, but I do have concerns if one is selected that doesn't necessarily perform the check as thoroughly as another.
The SBI checks state and national criminal records and requires fingerprints.
Do you think that this is something that will get passed?
I like to think that yes, it's waiting to get looked at. We're hoping it doesn't get forgotten, but right now it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of hope for it this session.
Now, legislation similar to this bill have been proposed in the past, but none have been successful. Destiny Patterson, WRAL News.
In most cases, either the head of the school or the school board has the final say on hiring. They can choose to hire people with criminal histories, depending on the crime, when it happened, and whether it puts students at risk. You can typically find your school's background check policy on their website.
We take a closer look at what inspired this investigation and what parents can do to protect their children. You can find that discussion on our WRAL YouTube page.